What if a truck's deadliest zone sits exactly where the driver can never look directly? Here is what nobody talks about when it comes to those massive 18-wheelers on the highway. The person behind the wheel actually sees less than you might expect from that high cabin. Most people get this completely wrong because they assume truckers have a full view around them. But physics has a cruel rule that no amount of experience can ever truly overcome. A flat mirror only reflects light coming from one very specific and fixed angle. Now think about the sheer length of a standard tractor-trailer stretching 20 meters long. That mirror cannot bend light around corners or show what hides right next to the doors. The result is an invisible corridor of emptiness that exists on both sides of the rig. And this empty space does not care about traffic laws or who has the right of way. It simply swallows cars and motorcycles as if they never existed in the first place. The federal data confirms 300 families receive that terrible phone call every single year. But here is the detail that makes this number even more disturbing upon closer inspection. Most victims are not the professional drivers who pilot these enormous vehicles for a living. They are ordinary people commuting to work or riding home on a sunny afternoon. They drive right alongside a steel mass weighing over 30 tons without any protection at all. The person inside the cab does not even know they are there until the impact happens. A blind spot does not discriminate between a careful driver and a reckless one on the road. It simply exists as a gap where human sight fails and physics takes over completely. So why has this problem persisted for nearly a century without a proper solution in sight? The trucking industry tried convex mirrors that offer a wider but heavily distorted field of view. They added radar sensors that beep loudly when something gets too close to the trailer. But most of these remained aftermarket patches fitted onto a finished vehicle later on. They were never part of the original blueprint or the core structural design from day one. This next part is the most important because it reveals the true nature of the failure. A patch treats the symptom while the root cause remains buried deep within the architecture itself. And that root cause is the mechanical separation between the chassis and the electronic safety layers. On a traditional diesel truck, the brakes and stability systems work as completely separate components. They react in a sequential chain, where one finishes processing before the other even starts. When a 37-ton vehicle begins to skid on a wet or icy road surface, every single hundredth of a second lost in that chain carries life or death consequences. Stay with me because this changes everything about how we judge automotive safety from now on. A leaked Tesla document from July 1st reveals a radically different approach to this old problem. The internal paper describes an architecture drawn up from the semi's very first design blueprints. 10 exterior cameras form a continuous observation ring that surrounds the entire vehicle without gaps. Plus, one additional camera monitors the cabin interior to track driver alertness and fatigue levels. Write this down because the placement of these cameras is absolutely genius in its simplicity. A specific cluster sits above the front wheel arch on both sides of the truck cab. This position directly targets the most dangerous zone identified by years of accident studies. That zone is the side blind spot where cars disappear during lane changes or turns. From that low angle, the camera sees what no side mirror has ever been able to capture. It sees the space right next to the vehicle's own body which mirrors physically cannot reach. The reflection angle simply does not allow the mirror to show that critical adjacent area. But a digital sensor has no such limitation because it does not rely on reflective surfaces. It captures light directly and processes the image without any mechanical obstruction in between. Now consider how this data flows into the central system compared to traditional warning devices. These 10 cameras do not operate as isolated units that merely send alerts to the driver. They continuously feed information into a unified platform that controls brakes and traction simultaneously. When an object appears in what used to be a fatal blind spot, the system acts instantly. It does not simply flash a light or sound an annoying beep inside the cabin. It can directly intervene on the brakes before the human driver has time to react. That difference matters far more than most people realize when discussing active safety features. A warning system places the entire burden of reaction on tired human shoulders behind the wheel. Fatigue distraction and simple moments of mental fog are factors we can never fully eliminate. But an active intervention system does not wait for a perfect human response at any moment. It acts autonomously based on sensor data and pre-programmed safety parameters for every scenario. And that is the crucial gap between an assistive feature and a truly life-saving innovation. Inside the cabin, the change is equally revolutionary, but much quieter and easier to overlook. The driver no longer sits off to one side, as in every traditional truck ever made. They sit at the center position, facing two 16-inch QHD screens directly ahead. This simple interior design choice completely changes how a person reacts to sudden danger. All data from the 10 cameras appears right within the driver's natural forward line of sight. They do not need to turn their head or glance at a side mirror at all. They do not lose that precious half-second confirming what their eyes just barely caught. At highway speed, that half-second translates into 30 meters of travel distance roughly. And 30 meters can be the difference between a timely stop and a catastrophic collision. But here is the honest question that engineers and safety advocates must ask right now. What happens when heavy rain fog or snow reduces the accuracy of any vision-based system? What about dirt, mud, or grime sticking to the lens after thousands of kilometers of operation? These are legitimate concerns that no manufacturer can simply dismiss with clever marketing language. Tesla's answer lies in integrating camera data directly into the electric traction control system itself. Because an electric motor responds to traction demand almost instantly compared to hydraulic brakes. Traditional pneumatic systems require time to build pressure through a mechanical chain of events. The electric platform adjusts torque to each wheel simultaneously the moment sensors detect slipping. This eliminates the sequential reaction chain that plagues conventional diesel truck designs completely. Most diesel trucks treat anti-slip and vehicle stability as two entirely separate electronic modules. One finishes its processing cycle before the other even begins its own calculation phase. When a heavy truck skids on ice, every millisecond in that chain carries enormous weight. The Tesla Semi removes that chain entirely, replacing it with a single unified control platform. Traction to each wheel adjusts in parallel, not in sequence, for a much faster response. According to the leaked document, this was a core principle from the very first drawing. It was not a feature added later to fix a problem discovered during testing phases. So why did a young automaker achieve this, while established names like Freightliner and Volvo did not? The interesting answer is not about skill or engineering talent at all, in my opinion. Freightliner with its Cascadia line and Volvo with its VNR Electric are both respected names. They have decades of experience manufacturing commercial vehicles for fleets across the United States. But most of their safety packages are still sold as expensive add-on options for customers. The buyer must pay extra for blind spot warning and active lane keeping assistance features. This pushes the total cost considerably higher than the attractive base price they advertise. Tesla built the Semi on a purely electric platform from the ground up without compromise. Integrating sensors into the existing traction system did not require any additional costly hardware. Diesel trucks require fitting electronic systems onto a mechanical structure not designed for electronics. That is an advantage born from platform architecture, not from one company being superior overall. Freightliner and Volvo could certainly follow a similar path if they choose to do so. The only question is whether they are willing to redesign everything from the ground up, or continue improving gradually on the aging platforms they have already invested heavily in. This is not a concept sitting on paper waiting for a distant future release date. Tesla officially entered large-scale production at its Nevada plant starting in April 2026. The designed capacity reaches up to 50,000 vehicles per year coming off that line. Every truck leaving that factory carries this 10-camera architecture as a mandatory standard feature. It is not a paid extra option reserved for wealthy fleet owners with deep pockets. Whether equipped with the 822 kilowatt-hour pack for long journeys or the smaller 548 kilowatt-hour pack for regional delivery routes, the safety system remains identical across every single vehicle produced at that facility. Real-world operation is already reinforcing the numbers that look so good on paper. A field tracking event monitored 22 different trucks running across North America simultaneously. The Tesla Semi, operated by PepsiCo, achieved an average distance of nearly 574 miles per day. That performance far surpassed every other competitor tracked in that same observation period. This is not direct proof of the camera system's life-saving capabilities on the road, but it shows something equally important about the vehicle's overall reliability and practical usability. This is a machine truly rolling on highways every day, carrying real cargo for real customers. It faces actual weather conditions, not a controlled laboratory environment with perfect lighting. However, fairness demands that we acknowledge the questions that still lack complete answers today. Because the Semi has only entered large-scale production since the beginning of this year, there is not enough long-term, wide-scale operational data for independent safety agencies yet. They cannot issue a final assessment of its actual accident reduction rate compared to traditional trucks. The camera system, however intelligent, remains fundamentally a vision-based system with inherent limitations. Like every other vision-based system, it needs further verification under the harshest possible conditions. Blizzards, dense fog, and thousands of continuous operating hours that degrade the lens quality. The complete shift from physical mirrors to electronic cameras raises another equally legitimate concern. What happens if the camera system encounters a software glitch or loses signal mid-journey? A traditional mechanical mirror almost never faces that kind of complete failure scenario. Only time together with wide-scale real operational data can fully answer these pressing questions. Fleets considering a switch to electric trucks should not look only at the design specifications. They need to continue tracking independent data as the Nevada plant accelerates production in coming months. No technology is absolutely perfect from day one, not even a system this carefully designed. What deserves recognition is not that Tesla has thoroughly resolved every possible risk on paper, but that they chose to face this deadly problem head-on from the very first sketch. They treated safety as a foundational requirement rather than an incidental cost to address later. These same 10 cameras, besides their immediate safety duty, serve another equally vital purpose. They are quietly collecting real-world image data to train the full self-driving system. Data validation devices were recorded operating on public roads, most recently this past June. Every kilometer the Semi travels is therefore protecting people around it right at this moment, and simultaneously teaching the entire future fleet how to see what humans have always missed. For nearly a century, truckers relied on mirrors that physics simply could not improve further. Now, a digital network learns from every mile driven to make the next mile even safer. This is also why the investment in camera hardware is difficult to consider as wasteful spending. Even though the initial cost may be somewhat higher than a traditional set of mirrors, the same hardware system is simultaneously serving two completely different but equally important goals. It protects lives in the present moment while accumulating valuable data for a much safer future. In the end, this story is not just about Tesla or the trucking industry exclusively. It is about who will dare to redesign a standard that has existed for a century. Instead of continuing to patch broken systems with temporary solutions that never fully work. For the families who have lost a loved one in a blind spot collision over the years, What they care about is not which automaker has more impressive technology or bigger numbers. They simply want to know whether next time the driver sitting in that cabin will actually see. That is the true measure for any safety technology, regardless of the brand name attached. Not how impressive the spec sheet looks during a product launch event or press release, but whether it can truly change the outcome of a fateful moment on the highway. And the story of these cameras is only one part of a much bigger picture overall. The entire semi-architecture was built so operators no longer have to choose between performance and safety. 10 cameras, one design philosophy, and a narrative longer than what we have just covered today. Here is a thought that might change how you look at trucks from your car window. Every time you drive next to a big rig, you are trusting physics and human reflexes entirely. But physics has blind spots, and human reflexes have delays that no training can fix. The only real solution is a machine that sees everything and reacts faster than we can. That is the promise of this system, and also the challenge it faces in reality. Will other manufacturers follow this path, or will they stick to their old incremental upgrades? The answer depends on whether they view safety as a cost or as a core principle. And the data from Nevada over the next few years will provide a definitive answer. Until then, every truck on the road carries this hidden risk for everyone around it. But at least one automaker decided to build a machine that finally acknowledges that risk. It built a machine that uses digital eyes to cover what human eyes cannot physically reach. That is not just an engineering achievement, but a philosophical shift in how we design vehicles. We design for the worst-case scenario, not for the sunny, perfect day with clear visibility. And that shift might ultimately save thousands of lives over the coming decades ahead. Stay with me, because the real revolution is not the cameras, but the thinking behind them. The thinking that says every life on the road is worth that extra bit of engineering effort. Now, I want to leave you with one final question that lingers in my own mind. If we can build trucks that see everything, why do we still allow blind spots to exist anywhere? The technology exists, and the cost is reasonable, so what is holding the rest back? Perhaps it is simply inertia, a preference for familiar designs over radically new ones. But inertia kills 300 people every year, and that number is not acceptable. The cameras are here, and they are working on real highways with real cargo today. The data is being collected, and the system is learning from every single mile traveled. What happens next depends on whether we demand this standard for every truck on the road. Not just the premium electric ones, but the entire fleet moving goods across every country. That is the bigger conversation that this leaked document has quietly started without fanfare. And it is a conversation that every driver, passenger, and pedestrian deserves to be part of. Thank you for staying with me through this deep dive into truck safety and innovation. This topic touches every single person who shares the road with commercial vehicles daily. And understanding how these systems work might just make you a more aware driver yourself. Knowledge is the first step towards safety, because you cannot avoid what you do not see. Now you know where the blind spots hide, and why they have been so dangerous for so long. You also know that a solution finally exists, and it is rolling out as we speak. The next time you pass a Tesla Semi, take a moment to appreciate those small cameras. They are watching the space that used to be invisible, and they are watching it constantly. That constant vigilance is what finally breaks the century-old curse of the blind spot. And breaking that curse means more families get to keep their loved ones home safely. That is the only statistic that truly matters in the end, beyond all the technical jargon. I hope this perspective gave you a new way to think about trucking and automotive design. If you found this valuable, consider sharing it with someone who drives frequently on highways. They might not know about this blind spot danger, and this information could protect them. Together we can push for a future where no driver has to guess what is beside them, and no family has to receive that terrible phone call that changes everything forever. The technology is ready, and now we just need the will to implement it everywhere possible. That is the real legacy of these 10 cameras and the architecture they represent today.